Welcome to the Heavenly Treasury broadcast where we help believers achieve God's financial abundance for your life. Today, we're going to be asking a very simple question. Do you follow the Abrahamic shot clock when it comes to your faith? Okay, what do I mean by that? Have you ever heard of that term? Probably not. But what you probably have heard of is your favorite sport having a shot clock. Okay, if you're a big football fan and you were watching football on New Year's Eve, there were some very important shot clocks down there that had to be taken into account. Otherwise, bad things would have happened and ultimately affected the results of the games. But what I'm referring to is football has one, basketball has one, okay? Those are sports where you have to be able to do what you're supposed to do, which is put up a shot or run a play before the shot clock runs out. Or in football, it's called the play clock. Either way, you have to do something where this little clock in your head says, okay, in professional basketball, I have 24 seconds between the time I inbound the ball to when I have to put up a shot. All right, so there's a shot clock that has to go on that once something is in your courts, you know for certain that you have to take it into account and you have to do what you're supposed to do amidst the rules. Otherwise, you lose it and the other team gets it or somebody else gets it, which in if you're playing a sport, it's the other team. Now, some sports, shot clock aside, some sports don't have one. Baseball doesn't have one. Golf doesn't have one. Tennis doesn't have one, so to speak. If you're in the PGA Tour, you can't just sit on the tee box and just wait and twiddle your thumbs for 5 minutes for the wind to die down. You can't quite do that, okay? But all things considered, when it's your time to go, you really just excuse me 1 second. All right. So as soon as you get to the tee box, you don't really have to, 10 seconds, I got to swing the club. Or as soon as the ball gets in your hand when you're about to serve in tennis, you don't have to think, well, I have to serve the ball within 8 seconds or my opponent's just going to get the point. Not quite that way. But there are some sports, it doesn't have to be a shot clock per se. It could be a timer of all things considered. Soccer has a timer. All right, so you got to score within the time, so to speak. There is some truth to hey, my sport does have a shot clock versus my sport does not have a shot clock, all right? Because in baseball, you can't just run out the clock on the other team. You actually have to beat them. Okay? And again, there may be some logic behind that. Obviously, if there wasn't a shot clock in basketball, the team could just hold the ball for 8 minutes or whatever and just get fouled because the opponent has to be able to get the ball back somehow. That's the logic behind the shot clock in some sports, okay? So in some sports, it does make sense, all right? A lot of you people watching have at least some inclination of desiring sports. I personally played sports from the time I was yay big until I left college. All right. Now, I wasn't a superstar athlete. I did make some teams. I did fail to make some teams. Okay. And I'm sure some of you are in the same boat. Again, if you're a gifted athlete, well, welcome to playing on Saturdays. Welcome to playing on Sundays. That's your future, and that's awesome. You're going to get paid very, very well to do that. All right, which is great. Okay. More resources for you in the kingdom. Fantastic. All right. But why am I discussing a shot clock? And what does this have to do with what we've been talking about when it comes to Seedtime and Harvest? Well, I will get to that. Just like when I was talking about encouragement as going this big circle, I'm over here. You have no idea why I'm over here. And then all of a sudden we circle back like, oh, that makes sense. Of course. All right. Again, thank the Lord for the great wisdom. A lot of the great revelations I get from reading the Bible and, of course, living my life as the way the Lord wants me to has been able to give me some great revelations. I thank the Lord so much for that, and that's why I'm doing this for you, so you can receive the Lord's blessing. So you can receive the Lord's blessing, especially when it comes to your finances. All right? That's the focus of this broadcast, for you to be blessed financially. Okay? It's not the only reason why we follow the Lord, but it is one of the benefits that we do get from following the Lord, because He has great specific rules, guidelines, and blessings that you can follow in His Word when you study it and get it in your spirit and then move. Wow. Watch what happens to your life. All right? It's only up from here. So what does this have to do with Seedtime and Harvest? Well, we're about to talk to you about that. So before we get into that, what specifically is Seedtime and Harvest? All right? It's the scripture that we've been focusing on all season. Here we go. Genesis 8:22. Here we are. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease under any circumstances. It will never cease. So as long as we wake up and we're on planet Earth, seed time and harvest is there. And it is not just focusing on physical seeds. When it comes to a banana seed or an apple seed, it's also other seeds. I talked about encouragement and joy and happiness as a seed that you can sow and then reap that from the world and from other people around you when you sow. Okay? What man sows, that he shall reap. All right? That's what the Bible tells us right here. 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6. And this, he who sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly, but he who sows on blessing shall also reap on blessing. Okay? Whatever you sow, you will reap. If you reap a little, if you sow a little bit into the ground, when sowing means putting your seed into the ground, you're going to get a little bit out. So if you sow just one seed, you'll get one tree. Now, one tree can produce a lot of fruit, but if you have a large field and now you're scattering all those seeds around, sure, some are going to die, but most are going to actually produce fruit. And that's the goal for your life, to have your life produce fruit. Why? So it's easier for other people to follow you. Why is that important? Number one, so that other people can see that there is a God in your life, El Shaddai, the God of more than enough, that says, okay, your life is very, very different from mine. You have a lot more choices than I do. You have a lot more abundance than I do. How do I get that? Well, if you did it through the Lord, guess what you're going to promote? Him. You're going to promote the Lord. And that's good, because that's going to mean more people are going to join the faith and then follow the faith exceedingly. Not just a little bit, not just barely make it to heaven, but exceedingly. That's the point of you living an abundant life. Number one is to bring more people in. And then, of course, number two, to be able to be a blessing to others outside of just yourself. All right? That's another important thing. And then we cannot forget all those in our household. We can't just bless the rest of the world without blessing our own household. That means your spouse and your kids. Very, very important. Okay? So today's seed that we're going to talk about is trust. We're not even to the financial benefits of sowing financial seed into the kingdom. We're not even there yet, because there's so much more that we have to discuss beyond just the benefits of financial seed. Because there are people that I know are watching this that have sown good seed into good soil and have not seen anything from it. I promise you, there are those out there, and you're not alone if you've been watching it. Okay? Some of you have sown seed. You've seen some fruit. You've seen that corn, but you haven't quite seen the full corn on the ear yet. This is going to help you today, all right, to get that big, big abundance that the Lord has for you. So, why are we talking about trust? Because if God can trust you with what you have now, He can trust you with more. Of course, we've all heard that before. If you can be faithful at the little, you'll be ruler of much. Why is that important? Because more equals more abundance, more resources, more finances, and more money. The more, you can't go to another level without increasing your finances to also match that level. That is so important, because once you get to that new level and you can be trusted with even more, then guess what? The Lord is going to know that, hey, there's a person right there that can really, really, really be trusted with more. Here it is. Okay? That's why this is so important, because we can sow trust into the Lord and then reap that trust back from Him. Wow. Look where your life is going to go. Because God, I will tell you this, God is up in heaven. He's constantly looking to all those people who are following Him and worshiping Him and saying, who can I use today? Not who can I use a month from now. Who can I use today to mightily expand my kingdom? Who can I use today to mightily expand my kingdom? That's what He's looking for. Okay? That's really what He's looking for. So, do you want that to be you? Do you want that to be you? Yes. Why? Because that means there is greater blessing on your life, and part of that blessing includes finances. When you have been blessed by the Lord and favor is overflowing toward you in every aspect of your life, including your business, including your work, and if you have one, including a job, all right? But for those of you who are in business, when favor is overflowing to you, you know that there is a God in heaven working all things for your good. And when He knows He can trust you with more. He's going to give you that favor. Why? Because favor is a shortcut to the next level. That's what it is. Favor is a shortcut to the next level. And more levels mean more finances. There are people who literally are today meeting with very, very, very important people. Again, it could be the business realm, the ministerial realm, the governmental realm, whatever phase of life that you serve in. Again, business, government, ministry, doesn't matter. There are people right now that have literally skipped levels that some people work years to achieve. Some people work years to achieve. That all of a sudden it's just some business leaders just seem to have all the favor and all the blessing. Why? This is why. They have built trust with God. They have built trust with God. And when you build trust with God and he knows he can use you, he's going to make favor overflow towards you. He is, okay? And more favor means bigger levels. Bigger levels mean more finances because favor is a shortcut to the next level. That's really what it is. That's really what it is, okay? Some people, again, if some people can blow a tire on their car and then have to wait 3 weeks in the shop to get it fixed. Others of you will blow a tire, pull over on the side of the road, and somebody just miraculously pulls up right behind you, saw it, and can fix your tire in 5 minutes, and you're on the road like nothing ever happened. No hindrance to your life whatsoever. That's the difference between favor and no favor. And more trust means more favor. More favor means higher levels. Higher levels mean more money, more abundance for you and the kingdom. Yes, yes, and yes. That's why we focus on this today. So how do we get that trust? Well, this is where the title of the message comes in, and the title of the broadcast comes in. It is the Abrahamic shot clock. And I don't know if anybody else has used this phrase, but the Lord really gave this to me because the father of our faith is Abraham. Now, other religions also will look at Abraham as the father of their faith. Why? Because he did what the Lord asked him to do. That's why, okay? Now, yes, there were some moments of unbelief, okay? When Abraham, slept with his maidservant and had Ishmael versus Isaac, okay? And those two descendants are still fighting it out today and will be for the end of time. Putting that aside, literally, this is why they call it the father of our faith, because there's a blessing for that faith and that obedience. There really is. And I harp on this so often, is that there is a blessing for obedience, a tangible financial blessing for obedience. Okay, it doesn't always include finances, but part of it is finances. It is. So how do we do that? By doing what the Lord asks us to. Okay, so how do we define the Abrahamic shot clock? So in college basketball, I believe the shot clock is either 30 or 35 seconds. I haven't watched a college basketball game in so long. Oh my goodness. NBA, I know it's 24 seconds. The play clock in football is iffy. Sometimes it's 40 seconds and then it drops to 25 seconds when something goes in pregame or pre-play, something like that. Okay, so there is a very set clock and time limit, and it's in seconds when it comes to those games. The Abrahamic shot clock is 24 hours. What does that mean? It means that when God gives you an assignment, it must have been begun in 24 hours. It must have been started within 24 hours of when you get the call to do it. Okay? It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't. Okay? It could be, I want you to send a thank you to your mom. I want you to tell your dad you love him. I want you to call this new client because they're gonna be a good blessing for you. Okay? It doesn't matter what it is. It could be business. It could be ministry. It could be, hey, I need you to go next door. His father is dying of cancer. I need you to pray for him. That's an assignment from the Lord. Okay? Now, some things, again, I don't care how many resources you have. I don't care how much faith you have. There are things that take more than 24 hours. There are. And even in the Bible, there are things that Abraham did that were more than 24 hours. Okay? So if God calls you to move to another part of the country, that doesn't happen in 24 hours unless you're living in your car. Because everything's already packed and you just get in and drive. And you're there to your destination within 24 hours. If you have a home and spouse and kids, you're not moving anywhere in 24 hours. You're lucky to leave the home in 24 hours, okay? God knows that. God knows that, okay? So the Abrahamic shot clock is 24 hours from the time you get your assignment from God. It must have been started and moving forward in 24 hours. Why do I say that? Because every single thing that Abraham did, that God called him to do, not only did he do it, but he started it within 24 hours. That's why. Okay? And so what are the blessings when it comes to this Abrahamic shot clock? And why do we talk about this? Why am I discussing this? Okay? Here's one of them. Genesis 22, 16 to 18. And God said, "By myself I have sworn, declares God, because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, that I shall certainly bless you, and I shall certainly increase your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore, and let your seed possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." Okay? Do you want your descendants to own cities and towns? Yes. That means you have descendants, which means you have the money to be able to sustain those descendants. Okay? That's abundance. That's part of that right here. Now, this is after Abraham is already wealthy with gold, silver, and cattle, and livestock, and all of that, and servants. I mean, Abraham, I think, had over 300 servants. Do you have over 300 servants in your house? Okay? Even wealthy people they're lucky to have 3 servants. You know, a housekeeper, a maid, and maybe a chauffeur. I mean, unless you own some 50,000 square foot mansion, you're not going to have 300 servants. Abraham did. And that's the blessing of the Lord being rich and adding no sorrow is right there. That's what it is with Abraham. Okay? That's one of the blessings. Here's another one. Deuteronomy 8:13. "And your herds and your flocks increase, and your silver and your gold increase, and all that you have are increased." That's part of the Abrahamic blessing. How about Deuteronomy 28? Here's another one right here. "And God shall make you to have plenty of what is good, in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground, in the land which God swore to your fathers to give you." Now, this one is important because it's one of the great blessings from Deuteronomy 28. All right, the important point is this. Number one, all the blessings of Abraham belong to you. They do. All of them do, because it says so in Galatians. You are grafted into the seed of Abraham. Okay? Because when it says, I think it's right here, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Okay? That in essence, part of that is referring to Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection thereafter, to be able to graft us in to this seed of the nations shall be blessed, because we're now grafted into the seed of Abraham. Okay? And all those Old Testament blessings belong to us. So all the stuff in Deuteronomy and all the stuff in Genesis that Abraham did and his seed did and all the Israelites did, guess what? That belongs to you too. You have a promised land. Did you know that? You have a promised land. A physical land that you're supposed to take. It is. Not just a spiritual land. All right? I'm talking about a physical land that you're supposed to have land ownership. It is. Okay? So that's part of what you're supposed to do. All right? As part of your covenant with the Lord. That's part of it. Okay? If you want to get that big blessing that's in the Old Testament, you're going to have to follow the Abrahamic faith. And that's why we're talking about this. Okay? So what does that really mean when it comes to some examples? So how did Abraham do it? Okay? Let's go here. This is Genesis 12. This is before Abraham was called Abram. This is where he was called Abram. He hasn't yet said, "Hey, I'm changing your name from Abram to Abraham." Okay? This hasn't been yet. But here's what it says. "And God said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I will show you." So what is this saying? Go yourself out of your land. That means move. That means take everything you have and relocate. So if you've been called to relocate, that's part of Abraham. That's part of Abraham's covenant. Every single one of us are going to have to relocate at some point. Very, very few of us will be born in the same place and then live and then die in the exact same place and fulfill all of our call that God has for us. Very, very rarely. I mean, I would be really shocked if you are born and raised and you're 60, 70, 80 years old and you have fulfilled everything that God has called you to do, I would be very, very shocked. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because in the town that I live in, there are a lot of people who have grown up here, lived here, and they're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. They're third and fourth generation, and they have family businesses. I know plenty of those people. I'm not discounting that, but as a very, very rare exception. Most people, when they get into the faith, and I want to make this point very, very clearly, they're going to have to relocate at some point. Very, very few. Because I will tell you this, as soon as my wife and I got married, within a year, we had left the place where she had grown up and that she had known no other place. I think she left the state of Texas, I think once, maybe twice before we got married. I mean, and even in Texas, she lived in the city that she was born and raised in her entire life. Maybe only left to see some siblings, at some other part of the state a few times. Most of the time, like literally, her entire life was congregated in one city, and she never left hardly for any reason. Very, very rarely. But as soon as we got married, God had a very different plan for her and her location. Because within 12 months of us getting married, we had left, and we haven't been back since. In terms of living there, we visited, but we haven't lived there, and I don't think we ever will live there, because there's a reason. All right, He doesn't. God, if you have a very, very close relationship with your parents, again, not discounting people who live close to them, but very, very rarely can you achieve your assignment with your parents living literally next to you. Again, another one of those things that I've just seen, just the relationships between parents and children. Even when children are 20, whether children are 20, 40, or 60, doesn't matter. Very, very rarely, I mean so rarely, will somebody, be born in a city, live and grow up in that city, stay in that city, work in that city, and then see their kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids all grow up in that same city. And no one ever leaves for an assignment, even for a small period of time. Even for a small period of time, God says, go here. And it just doesn't happen. Very, very rarely. I'm telling you. So why am I harping on this? Because part of the Abrahamic faith and the Abrahamic shot clock is moving. So when God calls you to move, what do most Christians do? What do most Christians do? If God says, I want you to move, okay? All right, so maybe they want a sign. Maybe they want a sign from the Lord, okay? So God then gives them a sign. He still says move. He still says move, okay? And they just think, okay, I'm going to go to my pastor now. As if the pastor's going to know what God is speaking to them more than they do. I mean, seriously, that's again why a lot of Christians have not developed the level of faith that Abraham has. Because when Abraham was called to move, what did he do? Here it is. All right, so that's verse 1. Verse 2 is, I'll make you a blessing. Verse 3, I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. Verse 4, so Abram left as God had commanded him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. All right, now putting Lot aside, but what I really want to focus on here is, what did it say? Did Abram say, I need a sign, God? Did Abram say, I've got these people that are around me, they're really relying on me, I like my neighbors? No, it's not that. Abram left because God said move, he moved. It's not, I left 3 years later. It's he moved. He moved, okay? That's what happens. That's what Abraham did. Abram in this sense. He moved. All right, there you go. He moved. What's next? Here's another example of the Abrahamic shot clock. Genesis 22, and this is the famous one right here that most people will come to. Genesis 22. I'm sorry, I don't know why the first two lines of this text are over here. They're in La La Land or something, right? Verse 20, book 22, verse 1. And it came to be after these events that God tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham, he said, here I am. Then God said, take your son now, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I command you. What does it say in verse 3? And Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which God had commanded him. Okay? And then verse 4 is down here. It says, and on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place from a distance. If God called you to give up your most precious possession, now again, I say precious possession because God had promised Abram and Abraham, okay, your seed would be as numerous as the stars in the seashores. He is, I don't know, close to 100 years old, if not 100 here. And God says, take your only son and offer him up as a burnt offering. What does that say? All right. If God promised that you would be as numerous as the sand in the seashores, your descendants would, and then he's saying, kill your only son, something's not right. Something's off. Okay. But Abraham did it anyway. And what does it say? And Abraham rose early in the morning. All right. So what does it say? God told Abraham to basically go kill his son. And the next morning, Abraham was already on his way. That's the Abrahamic shot clock right there. 24 hours. Within 24 hours, when God said, give up your most precious possession, Abraham said, yes, sir, I'm in, and went. And again, why do I highlight that section in verse 4 where it says, on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place? Because that's why I say the Abrahamic shot clock is beginning. Tangible beginning. Action steps towards your assignment within 24 hours. That's why. Because if God called you to climb a mountain, which is what Abraham was called to do, all right, they did not have helicopters back then. He had to walk. And if his son was really young, he had to carry his son. He had to carry his young son. And he had to get on his donkey. And he had to get up there. And he had to take the wood for the burnt offering. And all of that. He had to take all of that with him. That doesn't happen in 24 hours. But his beginning was within 24 hours. God didn't shy him away because he waited a day to the next morning to go. Okay? But he said, 24 hours, here you go. So that's what he did. He went up. And on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place from a distance. So within 3 days, it was complete. Now, some of your assignments, right, if you're called to plant a church in a certain city, that doesn't happen in 3 days. It doesn't. You have, even if you've been given the land and all of the resources, you have to get zoning. You have to get permits. You've got to get a lot of stuff when it comes to building. If there's ever a minister right here who is called to build a building, not just buy a building that's already built. I'm talking about build a building from scratch. If you've ever been called to do that, you know that is not a quick process. It is not. Now God can move you a little bit quicker. Not putting that aside. A lot of people who wait for months, if not years, to get permits, the minister can submit them, and then 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks later, they've been approved. When normally that process is months upon months. Okay, so there also is that. So that's why I'm saying the Abrahamic shot clock is beginning. It's taking the shot within 24 hours. You've already taken the shot, meaning you've got the ball and you've already released it. Meaning you're already on your way to completing your assignment. You're already on your way. That's what it is. 24 hours. 24 hours. That's what you have. When the Lord calls you to do something, 24 hours. 24 hours, it must have been started. And if it's something that can be done really quick, it should be completed. So if you're supposed to call your dad and thank him that you haven't spoken to in 6 months, and God says, call him up, say thank you for being a great dad. And you don't want to because you haven't spoken to him in 6 months because you're angry because you had an argument over something stupid 6 months ago. And you've wasted 6 months and God says, call him. That's not something that should be done over a 3-week period. That should be done over 3 minutes. Pick up the phone. You've got his number. Call him up. There you go. Assignment complete. Why do we do that? Again, blessing for obedience. What does that mean? If you can be trusted with what you have, you will be given more. What does that mean? All right. In biblical terms, that's the parable of the talents. So this is the one where Jesus is giving the parable of there's three servants, 5 talents, 3 talents, 1 talent. They've all been given, and they say, go make it grow. Now this is the guy with the 2 talents who said, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more besides them. What does that mean for you and your trust and your faith? It means, God, you gave me 2 assignments. I have completed both of them. I have completed both of them in a timely manner, without question. So what is God going to say? Well done, good and trustworthy servant. You are trustful over a little, I shall set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. So what do you get? You get the joy of the Lord, and you get more. More means more money. Okay? So I don't care if what you've been called to do with the Lord makes no monetary sense whatsoever. There's a bigger purpose, and a lot of it has to do with your refining about who you are. Because when you have to go to the next level, you have to build yourself up now, so when you get to that next level, you don't fall backwards. That's what a lot of people do. They will say, I'm ready for more. I want more, and beg and beg and beg and beg and beg and beg that they want more and more and more. And when they get more, they realize why the Lord hadn't given them more. So then they fall backwards. And it's a lot more difficult to turn around when you're going backwards and start going forwards again than it is for somebody to say, hey, I'm here, and before I move forward, Lord has to do something with me. The Lord has to do a work in me. I got to build my faith. I got to seek the Lord. I got to do it all. That's why. Okay? So the Abrahamic shot clock sows trust. You're sowing trust with the Lord to reap more trust from him. You're sowing trust. Hey, Lord, I trust you. Then the Lord will repay you and say, well done, good and faithful servant. Here is more. Here is more trust. And in order for you to have more, for God to have more trust in you, he's going to have to increase your level. Because in order to trust with you with more, that means you have to build yourself up and be able to handle the more. And be able to handle the more. And once he knows you can do that, that's when the more comes. And with that more comes more money. That's part of it. Now, again, anybody who's built a church from 10 to 100 to 1,000 knows that their personal income has grown when the church was 10 versus 100 versus 1,000. It always has been, and it always will be. Now, that's not because your offerings increased and so you can dip into more of the offerings. It's because your seed has grown significantly. And now the seeds that you are sowing were your harvests from 2 or 3 levels ago. And when you sow even more, you're going to reap even more. Because remember, he who sows sparingly reaps sparingly. But he who sows generously will reap a bountiful blessing. A bountiful, generous blessing. That's why. So, when the Lord, so this is what I want to close with. When the Lord speaks to you, 24 hours to begin. 24 hours to make tangible progress on what the Lord has given you. 24 hours. That's what you get. That's what Abraham got. That's what you get. Why is that? Again, so we can build our trust and give increase and receive the increase from the Lord. That's what we can do, because as you move to another level, the increase comes. All right? And increase in responsibility, increase in your faith, and of course, with that is the blessing of the increase in money. That's why we talk about that today. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. So again, from here, your next step is to go to the Lord and say, what have I been disobedient on? Or what have you called me to do? What specifically can I do to build your kingdom today? Something along those lines. You'll know exactly what it is in your spirit. You will. You'll know exactly what to say. And when the Lord speaks to you, and when he gives you that assignment, you have to say, Lord, I want to be trusted with more. Give me something that I can do today to build my trust in you. And when you do that, he's going to give you something to do. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to look crazy. It's going to seem, why the heck am I doing this? But there is a purpose to it. Why? Because God's a lot smarter than you. He's a lot smarter than me. He knows what it's going to do for you internally and externally. That's why. And when you do that, it just gets a snowball of rolling. You sow that trust, and you're going to reap more trust, and you sow that trust back, you reap even more, and as you increase the levels, with that increased trust comes increase in finances. That's what it is. That's part of the increase in finances, okay? So, that's what I'm going to leave you today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a very blessed day, and we'll talk to you very shortly.